Hi everyone, this is Miss Esposito. I know some of you all are in Miss Moore's class, but she and I are going to be trading off on doing these videos together. For this lesson, you are going to need student handout 2. It says equivalent ratios at the top. So if you don't have that handy, go ahead and pause this video and go grab your notes. And I'm just going to go ahead and get started right here on the top. A ratio is a multiplicative comparison of two quantities. Now, don't let that word scare you. Multiplicative just means that it involves multiplication. That is all it means. It involves multiplication. So a ratio is a multiplicative comparison of two quantities, which describes the same attribute. They can be written three ways. So this is a bit of a review. Dogs to animals, students to teachers with a colon, or red marbles to blue marbles as a fraction. Now, when we talk about ratios that are equivalent, those can be simplified to the same value. Ratios that are equivalent can be simplified to the same value. For example, the ratio 4 to 5 is the same as the ratio 8 to 10, which is the same as the ratio 12 to 15. If you can multiply both of the numbers by the same value, that is what makes it equivalent. So for example, I can take the 4 and the 5 and multiply them by 2, and it will give me 8 and 10. So 4 times 2 is 8, 5 times 2 is 10. Now, I can do the same thing with the 12 and the 15, except I'm going to multiply by 3 to get 12 to 15. So 4 times 3 gives me 12. 5 times 3 gives me 15. So again, you have to be able to multiply both of the numbers by the same number, and that's going to give you an equivalent ratio. With the fraction, it's the exact same way. If I can multiply the top and the bottom by the same number and get the fraction, then we have an equivalent fraction. So in this case, I can take 1 times 2, and that's going to give me 2. And I can take 6 times 2, and that gives me 12. So again, as long as I can multiply by the same number, it's going to give me an equivalent fraction. To get 3 over 18, I just have to take the top times 3 and the bottom times 3. So 1 times 3 is going to give me 3, and 6 times 3 gives me 18. Okay? That looks a little bit messy, but those are all equivalent values, equivalent ratios. All right, so I'm going to do number 1 with you, and then the Edpuzzle is going to have you do number 2, but I also want you to do it on your paper. We are going to not do number 3 right now. All right, so number 1, it says create two ratios that are equivalent to the ratio below. So I'm just going to pick a number to multiply both of these by, and that's going to give me an equivalent ratio. Let's start with something simple like 2. I'm going to take 7 times 2, and that's going to give me 14. And then I'm going to take 11 times 2, and that's going to give me 22. That is an equivalent ratio. Now I'm just going to pick another number to multiply by to give me another equivalent ratio. And just to keep it simple, I'm going to do 3. Okay. 7 times 3 is 21. And now I'm going to do 11 times 3, which will be 33. All right, so these are all equivalent ratios. All right, now I'm going to have you guys do number 2 on your Edpuzzle and on paper. Okay, let's check and see if we did number 2 correctly. Okay, there's a couple of different ways we can do this. In this problem, I'm guessing you guys may have started with just multiplying by 2. Okay, so you may have taken 18 times 2, and that would have given you 36. And then you might have taken 12 times 2, right? 12 times 2, and that would have given you 24. And that is an equivalent fraction. You could have taken it times 3. You could have done 4. You can do an infinite number of answers to this. So there may be all kinds of different answers on these types of problems. So other than multiplying by a number, you can also divide by a number. And I just wanted to show you that as well. So I could take this 18 and I could divide it by 2. Okay, if I took 18 and I divided it by 2, that's going to give me 9. Now I would have to take the 12 and divide it by 2 in order to get an equivalent ratio. Oops, should be 12 divided by 2. 12 divided by 2 is 6. That is an equivalent ratio. Okay, I could even make another equivalent ratio here by dividing both of these numbers by 3. So 9 divided by 3 would give me 3, and 6 divided by 3 would give me 2. And that's another equivalent ratio. I could keep going and going and going forever by either multiplying by any number or dividing by any number. As long as you did both of them, they would be equivalent. Okay, let's move on to number 4. With determining when ratios are equivalent, there are 2 different ways. I'm going to show you both ways. The first way is just to see if there is a number that you can multiply by that will give you the next ratio. Okay, so in this example, I can see that 2 times 4 gives me 8, and 5 times 4 gives me 20. So again, if I multiply the top and the bottom by the same number, it's going to give me an equivalent ratio. So that tells me that yes, these 2 numbers are equivalent. And then I can determine the scale factor is 4 in this problem. Okay. Another way to do this is to use your calculator. Okay. We know that fraction means divide. Okay. Let me clear this out. Okay, if I take on my calculator and I punch in 2 divided by 5, it gives me 0.4. So 2 divided by 5 is 0.4. Now I need to see if 8 divided by 5 is the same. Is 8 divided by 5 equal to 0.4? I'm sorry, 8 divided by 20 equal to 0.4? And it is. 0.4 is equal to 0.4. So that tells me that these 2 ratios are equivalent because they both equal 0.4 when I divide them. Now I'm going to let you guys do number 5, and you can choose to do that by finding the multiplier or the scale factor or using a calculator. I can just tell by looking at this one, it's going to be a lot easier to use a calculator, so have a calculator handy. Okay, let's check number 5 and see how you did. I'm going to do this one with my calculator. So I'm going to take 12 divided by 4, and that gives me 3. And then I'm going to take 6 divided by 3, and that's going to give me 2. Are 3 and 2 equal to each other? No, they are not. So these are not equivalent, okay? They are, and this is a sign for not equals. I don't know if you've seen that before, but they are not equivalent. All right, let's look at number 6 and determine if these are equivalent. Again, I am going to use my calculator, okay? And I'm going to take 8 divided by 6, and that's going to give me 1.3. And then I'm going to take 20 divided by 15. And that is going to also give me 1.3. Are they equivalent? Yes. All right. Let's move on to the next topic. We are only going to learn one method on working with ratios. So there are lots of different ways to do this, but we are going to learn one method. And I think it already says this in your notes. We're going to do tables. Okay? All right. This first one, Audrey and Megan are decorating for a birthday party. Audrey hangs 4 streamers in the same amount of time that Megan hangs 6. If Audrey hangs 12 streamers, then how many will Megan hang? All right, so the first thing we need to do is make a table with Audrey and Megan, okay? So I have Audrey and I have Megan. And there's my table, okay? And Audrey hangs 4 streamers and Megan hangs 6. Now the question is, if Audrey hangs 12 streamers, how many will Megan hang? So we always kind of, in our table, write what we know, and then I like to put a question mark next to what I don't know, okay? Now, we use what we know to figure out what we don't know. So sort of just like up here, I wanted to figure out what do I multiply by to get that number. We're going to do the same thing down here, okay? In order to get from 4 to 12, I had to multiply by 3. So I'm going to do the same thing with the 6. I'm going to take 6 times 3, and that's going to give me 18. So in the time that Audrey hangs 12 streamers, Megan will hang 18. All right, let's look at the back here. Let's flip this over. Again, I think your guys says tables. We are going to do this one at a later date. Don't mark it out, but we're going to do this top one at a later date. And I want you guys to go ahead on your Edpuzzle and on paper to try this problem right here, the third one. All right, let's check this and see how we did, okay? All right, so on his math facts quiz, Jeremy missed 2 out of 11 questions. The next quiz has 55 questions. How many can Jeremy expect to get correct? We're going to make a table with missed questions and total questions, because that's what we know. We know Jeremy missed 2 and there were 11 total questions. Okay, so that's what we need to make our table with, is what we know. All right, the next quiz has 55 questions. Okay, and we need to be able to figure out how many he got correct. But in order to figure out how many he got correct, we have to figure out how many he missed. Okay? All right, so again, we're going to decide what did we multiply by to get from 11 to 55. And in this case, we multiplied by 5. So we're going to do the exact same thing over here. We're going to multiply by 5, and that gives me 10, okay? But remember, 10 is the number of questions that he missed, and this asks me, how many can Jeremy expect to get correct? So if he missed 10 out of 55 questions, we would take 55 minus 10, and that's going to give me 45 correct. All right. Number 7, I'm going to have you guys do, and then we will check it. Okay. All right. A lemonade mix calls for 2 tablespoons of mix for every 3 cups of water. Okay. So now we have mix and water. Okay. If the container has 24 tablespoons of mix, then how many cups of water will be needed? All right. So I have 2 tablespoons of mix and 3 cups of water. The container has 24 tablespoons of mix, then how many cups of water? Okay, so again, I fill in what I know and I put a question mark next to what I don't know. And then I'm going to figure out what do I multiply by here to get from 2 to 24. And that was 12. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. 3 times 12 is going to give me 36. So you should have gotten 36 cups of water. All right, we are also not going to do number 8. What I want you to do is summarize today's lesson on your paper, and we will talk about that in our live meeting.